Skype, and so Adam, you want to give us a little intro to your video, and then we'll go to the video.
Hello, I'm Adam Kessel, and you guys already met my family. So I'll get started. The video came to be after my grandfather started getting on me about finding distant relatives, distant cousins that were on the north side of Chicago, and our family was on the south side of Chicago. So as part of this, I just had my computer one day, an Apple, so all the editing that was done on this was done on an Apple computer on iMovie. So if you were to engage your families, PCs have Movie Maker Pro, and if you guys are computer savvy, or if you have young people in your family, I'm a teacher, and I'll tell you just about from junior high all the way up, even in elementary school, these kids can work computers like magic. So it's a really great project to engage the young ones in your family about. So that's how I got started. I just kind of went up to his house in Mineral Point, and you guys will see how we got to Mineral Point here. But I just set it up on the table, on the kitchen table, and in my family the kitchen table was significant, and I wanted to make sure that it happened there because all kinds of debates were around the kitchen table. Let me tell you, that was like kind of our stomping grounds. We'd play cards, we'd have debates, so it was really important to me to kind of capture that for my kids, and really have a positive representation of what Italian culture is to our family, because there are lots of different representations of Italians in the media, and as a teacher, I can talk to folks that are not from the Italian community, and they have perspectives on Italians that aren't always positive. So I wanted to capture my grandpa talking about what it is for our family to be Italian. So that's where it starts. I'll play about 10 minutes of this, and then I'm going to wrap it up because the end of it's a lot more stuff focused on our immediate family's travels, but the historical stuff is pretty neat too. And everything that I did here, apart from the computer, it was all free. So all the pictures that you see are all from historical archives. And it became kind of like a scavenger hunt for me and my cousins. My grandpa would say one word, and I'm like, hey, we really need a picture of the Union Pacific South from like circa 1900. So we all kind of searched and started sending pictures, so it was a really neat way to engage all your cousins around something that is great for your family. So I'll stop talking, and I'll let my grandpa take it up here.
Let's start with my dad, okay?
Okay.
You come from Calabria, Italy, right? And the province is Reggio Calabria. The province would be the state, Reggio Calabria. The province that he comes from is Catanzaro. And the town he comes from is Spadula, S-P-A-D-U-L-A. That's where my dad was from. My mother is from the same area, but a different town. And the town that she's from is Cimbario.
Cimbario?
Cimbario. This is on the east side of the Apennine Mountains, in Reggio Calabria. Okay. Now, my dad migrated over here, as far as I can tell, between 1909 and 1910, and my mother about the same time, roughly about the same. And Dad came here and worked for, well, I'll get back a little bit. My grandfather was here, worked for the Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Paul Railroad. My dad came over here and my uncle. They also worked for the same railroad. The put the track in from Chicago to Mineral Point.
Huh.
So when they got to Mineral Point, everybody was out of a job. Because this was the end of the line, which it is today yet.
Huh.
So they had a, let's see, New Jersey Zinc Company was the name of it, smelters. And this was lead country.
Oh,
at that
yeah.
time. That's what Mineral Point, you gotta say. Mineral Point, this is Mineral Point. The lead that was dug up in this area went to this smelter, and that's where they processed it. This is where he went to work. But that's how the Little Italy at Middle Point got started, over that railroad. I would say that this place closed in 1930. 1930. And when the plant closed, everybody was out of the job. So then he went to work for the county in Rockland. But now there's none of the first generation left. And we figured out there's 9 left in this village, in this town, of the second generation, which would be my generation. Okay? Now, I don't know how many third generation kids there is, but there isn't a whole bunch of them either. So if it continues like it is another 15, 20 years, there won't be any Italians at that point. But back, as far as I can remember, this community here, when I was growing up, was the Italians on this side, a lot of German immigrants, neighbors, a lot of from Switzerland that was here, that were neighbors, and there was a lot of English and Cornish people here at that time, that more or less settled this town.
Yeah.
And today, it's still a Cornish settlement, is what they call it. It came from Cornwall, England. That's where these people all came from. Now, in fact, my sister-in-law out there is third generation from Cornwall, because her grandparents came from there. And I don't remember what year. I think they got married in 19. Let's see, what was it? I'd say they got married in 1912.
Yeah. You think so? What year was Gabe born in?
Rose was born in 13.
Well, and she had 2 miscarriages before she had Rose, didn't
She
she?
had one, I think, one.
One was.
Maybe it was one. So it had to be earlier than that then.
That's
They got
right.
married. They had to get married in probably 1910, 1911.
Wow.
What year did we have our 50th anniversary with them?
Just anniversaries.
I don't think you was here.
Huh?
You didn't come to that, did you?
What?
The 50th anniversary.
Ours?
Yeah. Our folks.
Oh. Yes, I was here because I fried chicken for it.
Okay. It had to be in the middle 50s, right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So I'd probably say 55. Was the 50th? So they had to get married probably in 55, 1910, 1911, something like that.
Was Grandpa and Grandma's marriage arranged?
How was it arranged?
Yeah.
My 2 uncles, Uncle Pete and Uncle Dominic, worked on the railroad with my grandfather and my dad. At that time, most of the immigrants that were in this area were all from Region Columbia. There was none of them from way up north or south, and that's where they were from. So, little by little, they knew who they were, okay? So, Uncle Dominic matched my mother with my dad.
Was she already here then, or?
She was here already. And That's how they got together. Well, my mom's side never. My mom's side, my two uncles and my mother came to this country. She had a sister that stayed there. She lived nearly all her life until she passed away. My two uncles are both gone, of course. And we haven't kept in touch really a lot with our cousins anymore. They all lived in Chicago, and I don't know where they live now. But, there's probably some there yet. I knew both of my uncles, of course, and I never did know my aunt from on my mother's side.
Yeah.
She never came here. I knew my uncle on my dad's side because he was here. But he died in the big flu in 1919. And he's buried here in town.
Up at the cemetery at the top of the hill?
St. Paul's, yeah.
Okay.
You ever see that picture? I don't think you
I
did.
don't think so.
My grandpa was sitting down. Okay. For the poles or something. My grandma was standing alongside of him. And he was as tall as she was, and he was sitting down and she was standing up. That's how small she was.
Wow.
Grandma Solana was 6'7". That's where he comes from, because Grandma Zafina wasn't tall. No, and Dad wasn't tall. And the mother and Grandma on his side wasn't tall either. So it all came from the Solana side, you know. Because Uncle Pete was really small. He's a pretty big man too. And Mom, you know, look at, my mother was tall.
Did the family always live in this, right here,
Oh,
in
yeah.
this area? Yeah.
Right across the street there. That's where we were all, that's where we were raised.
Yeah.
My two sisters and my brother were born in another house out south of here. But then the Dad bought this place. And all the rest of us were raised right there. But you know, back in the days, we're all immigrants that time, okay? A lot of us spoke very little English. When I was growing up, I spoke Italian before I spoke English. And I was kind of fortunate because I was one of the last ones. And my sister went to school, so they spoke English. And that's how I got to speak English, because they spoke in their home. My folks never spoke. Now, there was Germans, there was Swiss, Norwegians, Bohemians in this area. And they all got along like two peas in a pod. They used to get together.
Couldn't understand each other much.
Yeah.
They couldn't speak very good, but they did get their message across to each one, only.
Yeah.
But they used to come up here, they used to make music like you can't believe. I can remember that.
Yeah.
They had accordions, they had banjos, they had mandolins, they had guitars, and a bugle. What do they call that?
Trumpet?
Trumpet.
Yeah. What did your dad play?
We just talked about that, remember? My sister just told me, she says, you remember Dad could play just about any instrument that he gave you? Because he played the accordion, he played the guitar real well, he played the mandolin real well, and the flute. You know that little long stick with a hole?
Yeah.
He played that too. But he could really play instruments, I'll tell you. Rose, my sister Rose was great on that accordion. And Brother Bert was too. But they're the only three musicians we had. The rest of us couldn't carry a tune and push a basket.
Tell us about when you used to go to Chicago to sell mushrooms.
You want to hear that?
Yeah, I think that's a fun story.
Well, back, in the middle 30s. Middle 30s. Land was being cleared. This is all woods at that time. And farmers were clearing land and cutting trees. And of course the stuff stayed in the ground. So after a couple of years, the mushrooms used to grow on these stumps by the bucketful.
Oh yeah.
A lot of times we'd go out with we had an old pickup truck, old T, You get a box full of mushrooms and they'll just go out there and pick them. When they come home and they blanch them, clean them, put them in wood vats. And they put all them in there, and then after the season was over, I put those things in the pickup truck and take them to Chicago to, trying to think of the name of that cheese company there. Asiago Cheese Company.
Asiago cheese.
And trade all these mushrooms for food.
Mm.
And you come back with, after some, the mushrooms were going at that time for 7 cents a pound.
Mm.
They traded all for food, and we come back and get a truckload of food. Put that all in the basement, and we just do that every year. I mean, I think they're more forward to that, like you do your retirement.
Right.
So we can listen to more, but I want to respect the other presenters' time. So are we good on?
Yeah.
I'll open up now. There's one more story that I wanted to share because it's my favorite story that my grandfather tells, and I'm not sure if it's in 2 minutes or another 10 minutes. So, but this and it's these little instances that we capture that my kids will be able to listen to eventually, and it's a big deal. The idea of these connections from Mineral Point to Chicago. And supporting the community across the board.
What year is Recapturing here? When was your grandfather born?
I could default that to my mom over here.
Did he pass away?
He passed away last year.
Uh-oh.
Last year. So this
How
was
old was he?
recorded. Oh my gosh. How old is he? 1930. So yeah, he was in his 82. I'm a history teacher, not a math teacher, thankfully. So. But yeah, I mean, this was really exciting for me to do, and hopefully my girls will watch it. They've watched it many times already. But the last story, if you guys don't mind me telling you one more story, this is a story about they worked in the smelting furnaces. So every so often they'd have to replace all the bricks in those furnaces, and they'd leave them out. So my grandfather's father, my great-great-grandfather, I guess, yeah, great-grandfather. They picked up all these bricks and they decided to make a big oven outside. So they took an old the metal part of a mattress, the box spring. They laid it in there and poured the cement over the top of it, waited for that to harden, and then they got willow trees to bend across. They bent the willows in there, and then they took the old bricks from the smelting furnace and built that up around the top. And they made a big, giant stove, wood-burning stove oven, and my grandmother would cook 50 pounds of flour at a time, make all this bread, and from what I understand, all the kids in the neighborhood would come out, and they would have bread they cooked for the whole neighborhood, regardless, Italian, German, Dutch. Everyone came out, and it was a big celebration, and that oven had been out there for years. I mean, I can't remember if it was there when I was little. I know it wasn't in the past, but it's these small stories, and my grandpa's a storyteller, and I'm sure everyone has a storyteller in their family. So I think that's one of the really amazing things about Italian culture is we can tell some pretty darn good stories. So thanks for watching, giving me your time. If you have any questions, hopefully I have answers for them.
Questions, because he's going to be leaving the conference.
Well, how did you take the video itself?
So I had one of these little guys. Most of the laptops just have built-in cameras.
Okay.
So I tried to make it as I turned the screen off so my grandpa didn't see himself, and I just set it up. I just let him talk. I didn't have questions prepared.
You actually recorded on your...
I recorded on the computer, and then I used iMovie to chop it up and do all the editing in there. But yeah, I recorded it directly onto the...
Did you put it on YouTube?
I have not put it on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Well, that's probably the easiest part.
How long did your whole take?
It's about 20-25 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, so again, we can immortalize our family and pass on live interviews here of our family members to be handed down forever, and so that their experience is not lost. And really, that's what we're all about here, to try to build up a body of information about Italians in the Chicago area, or Italians in America, about the whole immigrant experience that can never be wiped away.
Yeah.
And the family interest, of course, this isn't gone with the wind, but it has some interest in the family, and then some of the stories about the mushrooms, about the other stuff, are applicable to other groups as well. Thank you very much, Adam. I'm really happy to get this. We welcome anyone who does a production about their family to contribute that to us here at the Casa Italia Library, because you never know when somebody's going to be looking for it, and we want to have a central place. And Adam mentioned that you've heard of Mob Wives. They're filming it in Chicago, and this is the representation of Italians that gets on the Schlock TV, etc. Well, we've got to fight back in terms of stopping them from making it or creating. But we've also got to fight back in terms of creating our own authentic materials, and to get them out in the community, so that maybe someday some television station will want to do something other than Mob Wives. Maybe they want to do something about the Zaffarino family. But okay, now we have, this is multi high tech here. We have Kim Palmisano she lives in Chicago, but she goes into Minnesota for weekends. We have her on Skype. She has put together the most wonderful scrapbook about her family history. And let's see if we can call her and talk to her. And, oh wait, okay, let's go up, 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 up.
Hi, Dominic.
Hi Kim, how are you doing?
Well, how are you?
Okay, you're not showing, okay, the video is coming up now, and I have sort of introduced you as the best scrapbooker, and Kim, by the way, was the chairperson of the annual Casa Italia fundraiser, and she did a very fine job, and she had the most glamorous dress on that night, and well, now she's coming to us in a different capacity. Kim.
Hello, may I start, Dominic?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. First of all, hello everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, my name is Kimberly Palmisano, and I am speaking about my book, which I really apologize it's not there today. But actually, I made a book about my family. It's on my father's side. My father is 100% Italian, and his mother, my grandmother, is one of 20 children. And so there was just a lot of documentation on my family, and it was pretty unique. And so I was very interested in working on this book. And basically, the reason why I really wanted to start working on this book was I completed law school in 2005, and I moved to Rome, Italy. And I also visited the town that my grandmother's from, which is Bari. And I took a lot of photos there. I did a lot of soul searching and thought a lot about my grandmother, who had actually passed away during my first year of law school. And that was really what inspired me to start the book. And, through that personal experience, I, just came from this really amazing family that had a lot of history, and it had not been documented. And I felt that, like my grandmother, many of those 20 children were passing away, and I really wanted to try to learn more about their story and make sure that we documented it for not only myself, but my children one day, hopefully, and our other relatives and their children. So that was really the reason why I started working on the book. It was very, very personal. And, I'm just an ordinary person, and I guess the way that I started working on the book, actually, I did start at Casa Italia. I was in the library. Dominic was actually there and sort of took me under his wing, and I pulled a lot of the books from the library, videos, documentaries specifically, and would take notes, trying to basically find certain themes that would, the Italian immigration process that could correspond even to our personal history. In addition to that, I found like I went and got the federal census. I went to Ancestry.com. I went to it, I'm forgetting the name of it now, but it was an archives, National Archives, I believe it was the Great Lakes Archives Office.
On
Went
Kensington?
through microfilm there, found a lot of newspaper articles on my family because they were voted the largest Italian. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you broke up a little bit. Repeat it, okay?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes. Not so
Dominic?
much. Not so much. What's happening? Okay. Try it now. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Dominic?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not sure where I left off. But
The largest
anyway, so
family.
I went to, okay.
National
So so there were a lot of newspaper articles on my family because they were voted the largest Italian American family at the 1933 Century of Progress Fair. And so that's where I received a lot of the articles from. And at one point, I even went to a Barnes & Noble, and because I found an article, and I found...
Okay. There's a problem with this call. Hold on while they get back. She was talking about finding information. There was even a Time magazine article about the family of 20 children taking limousines. I don't know how many limousines it took to go from, I think it was Elmwood Park or one of the western suburbs here, to downtown to the World's Fair. And they were feted and honored, and they got into the paper. And incidentally, the World's Fair of 1933 was a big moment for Italians in Chicago because of the arrival of Italo Balbo and because the Italians were pushing their public relations. Are you there, Kim? Maybe we should, no, if I remember it right, you can't get out of here. Now it won't let me get out now. So we're stuck. Okay, now maybe we can try to call again. And the World's Fair was good for Italian reputation. Yes, Kim, I was just filling in about the World's Fair, but carry on.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Kim. We can hear you. Internet connection problem. Hold on while we get the call back. Forget about Skype isn't doing its normal thing. Usually it's a lot better than this. I'm going to, well, okay, I got rid of poor Kim. Okay, well, anyhow, the World's Fair, Castruccio, Giuseppe Castruccio was the Italian consul general. And he was working very hard to make fascism popular and also to sell aviation technology to not only the United States, but to the whole world, because Italy was among the world leaders in aviation. And the World's Fair had representatives from all over the world here. And so the Italians put a big PR effort in, and the arrival of Italo Balbo with 24 seaplanes was a PR triumph. I mean, you hear today about people wanting to change the name of Balbo because he later on in the war he dropped bombs on Aborigines, but the reason why Balbo Drive is Balbo Drive is because it was a wonderful moment in the history of Italian Americans in Chicago and the history of the relationship between Italy and the United States, even though things changed a dozen years later. Well, Kim, well, let's see, we'll try one more time and see if we can get her back. It's not too happy. Okay, Kim, do it fast. Try to.
Hi, I don't know what happened.
Okay, pull the strings together, Kim. Usually Skype is much more reliable than
Well,
that.
I can hear you. I can hear you so much better now. Okay, I can even hear you better than before. All right, so I was talking about, the last thing that I was talking about was my family being of 20 people, and the reason, did you hear that part?
Yes.
I got articles about some.
Yes.
Okay, so what I was saying was I was doing a lot of personal research and going out to my relatives to get the photos, and I went out to many of them, including cousins, because as I stated, the reason why I was really motivated to do this book was because many of those 20 children, my grandmother being the 13th of the 20, they were passing away. And I knew I had to work on this as soon as possible. There's actually only 3 of my great aunts and uncles left of the 20. So, and they, by the way, they all love this book. I mean, it's been on loan to each one of them. And so I got a lot of the information just by going out to my relatives. My mom had my grandmother's albums, and I went through all of those albums. I scanned everything. I mean, I probably have 1,000 photos from, all the relatives, including my grandmother and my mother's albums. And then I was saying that's what I did for the personalized aspect. But then I was going to, and I don't know if you heard this, but I was getting the I pulled up the Federal Census Bureau. I believe it is the Great Lakes Archive. Is that right, Dominic? The Great Lakes Archive?
Yeah, it's on Kedzie or Pulaski.
Yes. I found a lot of great material there. That's where I pulled up all the naturalization papers of my grandparents, my great-grandparents that came over from Italy. I went through microfilm, and that's where I got a lot of these articles about my family. But as I was stating, that my family was voted the largest Italian-American family in the 1933 Century of Progress Fair. So there was actually quite a bit of newspapers on them. And then what was interesting was I would pull up all these articles, and I was comparing, the newspaper articles, because that's where I was basically getting the freshest information, because my great aunts and uncles are much older now, and they're giving different testimonials of what happened. So I actually got to get the testimonials of my great grandparents. And then I put everything together. I did a lot of online research just to find, and as I was stating, with also my reading of books through the Casa Italia library, and also the documentaries that Dominic was providing me with. And I drew commonalities between stories that were coming out of my family and stories that other Italian Americans were experiencing that I was reading about in these books or learning about in these movies, and there were certain common threads, about the Italian American immigration process. That was very interesting to me.
Okay.
And then,
Any last points you want to make, Kim?
Yeah, so the only thing remaining is that now I'm at the point where I've made this book, but I have one copy of it, and I love it, but it's hard for me to reproduce it, which is why it's not there today. And so now I'm working on trying to go electronic and create this book electronically. Also looking into doing some, hiring a company or doing a video of it, just kind of make like a 4 or 5, I don't know, maybe longer than that. Probably will be longer than that. But a video about our family history because all my relatives want a copy of it. So I've been looking into different technologies and software to do that. And I was speaking with Dominic about it. I might be able to publish this through the Casa Italia publishing mechanism.
Yeah, we like the size of the market with the
Yeah.
big family.
Yeah. So,
Okay, well, any quick questions for Kim to take advantage of the interactivity?
How did she have time to study doing all that work?
Yeah, how did you find the time?
well, it was after law school. I would do a lot of the research on weekends, and actually, like I said, most of it was really done at Casa Italia, and I used a lot of that information to create an outline. I'm one of the tour guides of the Italians coming to Chicago exhibit. So I mean, it's really, it took me years to do this. It wasn't something that I did in a short time period.
Okay, well, very good. Thanks, Kim, and
Thank you
good
for
luck,
having
and we'll try to pass around information about your work.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
All right, thanks.
Okay, yeah, sorry about the Skype, and she has a really good sense of graphic design, and I think that you'd be really delighted to open these things. And on the market, you can find in the craft stores. Oh, okay, thanks. You can find in the craft stores these pages for scrapbooks that can get you started, and that can help you. Our next speaker is C.J. Martello. C.J. is best known in the Italian community as the successor of Mario Avignone in putting together the Petals from Roseland column, which focuses on the Roseland-Pullman area and the Italian-American community in Roseland-Pullman. But of course, like every community that Italians lived in, it was not just Italians. There were other ethnic groups there as well. So CJ has a program in PowerPoint. Go ahead and start your talk, CJ. And,
All right, like Dominic said, thanks, Dominic.
yeah.
My name is C.J. Martello. I grew up in Roseland, which is all the way out south by Pullman. Pullman, basically 103rd Street to 115th. And Roseland was west of the tracks at Cottage Grove. And Pullman came into being, well, the area was settled by the Dutch. Then Pullman bought up a lot of land, and he had like 7 men go out and buy up the properties without telling anyone what was going on. And then he said, okay, I'm building my model town, company town, and my factory down here to make Pullman Palace car companies. Excuse me. And that's when all the skilled laborers came over from Europe to work on his cars. So a lot of the people that lived in his houses in his community of Pullman were all skilled labor from Europe, and a lot of them were Italians, and they settled in Pullman and then just outside of Pullman. So Roseland started out Dutch, and then as the company built up and brought over employees, there were a lot of Italians that moved over there. So that's how Roseland Pullman became very Italian. And Dominic mentioned that Mario Avignone was writing this column. Mario wrote this column for 40 years, Petals from Roseland, and I took it up about 3.5 years ago. And one of the things Mario wrote about was when everybody came back from the war. That's when he started the column. Everybody came back from the war, and when Father Purini started the Fra Noi, he asked them to get the South Side Italians from Roseland involved. So that's when Mario started the column. And dealt with a lot of people that had been in the war, and they all knew each other, they all lived in the neighborhood, they worked at pretty much the same places in the community. So he had a wealth of mouth-to-mouth knowledge of what was the history, because they all were living it at the time. For me, I am backtracking, because we all know Roseland as a neighborhood changed, it's in the news for bad things now. But Pullman is diversified. Pullman is pretty strange because it's 115th Street, basically to 111th Street, and from Cottage Grove east, and that's the town of Pullman. And within that town, there's a lot of people who have not moved out. I work on a Facebook site called Roseland Roundtable, and someone just wrote on there and made me so mad. I just saw it yesterday. Said, oh, don't go there. My husband used to be a cop down there, and people are shot. 3 people get shot a day down in Pullman. It's like, if that was the case, there'd be nobody left alive in Pullman, okay? So I told her, you know, the thing is, I just left Pullman. I just took training as a docent or a tour guide at the Pullman factory site. And so there's a lot of people still in Pullman. So I began with those people down there getting information. And having grown up there, I talked about like cruising the Ave and things that were familiar to us in the 60s. And in turn, after writing a number of columns, 2 friends of mine, Dan Bavino and Paul Petratus and I, we got together. We said, well, we all had a common interest in Roseland. And so we got together for breakfast at Kel Harbor Inn, which is the only restaurant in Pullman. And we went there Saturday morning for about a month and a half. There we go. And after a while we decided, well, you know, we got to do something. How can we get something going here? And we came up with a Facebook site. And that's how we started. So let's see how we do this. Oh, very good. So where do you go for information was our big thing, because we were like, oh, we don't have any information. There's a book, 2 books, a 2-volume set of picture book of Roseland that was put out in the 80s. And we had seen copies of it, but there are none available for purchase. And it turns out that the 5 people that put it together, a couple of them had passed away. Mario was one of them. The guy, Paul Petratus of our threesome, was another one. But then 2 of the people, one person had the plates for it, and they said, well, my dad was a printer and I had the plates, and well, I'm not giving them up. And then another one, his son said, well, yeah, well, we have the copyright to it. So it's like, well, where do we go for information then? Because we couldn't use what they had. Well, here's where you go, hand-me-downs. You go to your mom and pop, you go to your grandparents, you go to your great-grandparents if they're still alive. And if your great-grandparents are alive and your mom aren't alive and your mom and pop are, you ask them, you know? And they'll tell you, you know, stories. One of the things, my dad lived till he was 87, but I never got the chance to talk to him. My one sister went to Italy with him, because I come from a large family of 8. Or originally my mom got up to 12, but 8 is where we settled. But anyway, 4 guys and 4 girls, you know? So, my dad, my sister, and my dad went to Italy and took a trip. And my sister tells me last year, oh, Dad told me, oh, we had such a good time. Dad's telling me all these stories and everything. I said, so, you wrote them down, right? She says, well, no. I said, okay, we got no stories, you know? But I'm the youngest in my family. My oldest brother's 81. You know, just in talking to them, I'd taken my brother for a ride through Roseland, and he says, yeah, when we lived there. I'm like, what are you talking about when we lived there? Well, it was before you were born. I had no idea. You know, so, oh yeah, and the guy next door did this and that, you know. So that's how you find out more facts about what's going on. By asking people, asking your relatives, you know. Okay, so look. So, beyond going home, what else, what that means is, who else can you ask? You know, like I said, I talk to my brothers and sisters, and the funny thing is, we still get along. You know, we have our quarrels and things, but we get along. We were just recently all at dinner, and these people are like, oh, so you're all friends? And we're like, no, we're brothers and sisters. They just couldn't believe that we could all sit down and talk, you know? So, you go and, you know, like I said, your brothers and sisters, and all you got to do is, with my family, I don't know, you get together, and you bring something up, and all of a sudden, oh yeah, remember this, remember that, you know? If you talk to my sister, Tootsie, Augusta, we all have good Italian names. Instead of CJ, I'm Costante, you know? So I talked to my sister, Augusta, Tootsie, and you mentioned the cat. She said, oh yeah, I remember when I was 12, and I caught this cat, and I thought he looked so pretty with a bow around his neck, except he choked to death. You know? It's like, where am I going to hear a story like that, you know? And then, it's like, when they were in school, you know, the trouble they got into, and oh, remember this. And this is valuable family history because, you know, it's going to be gone if it's not related. And if you want further family history, and like I said, if you talk to your parents or your grandparents, you know, and we're first generation here, so my parents would have been a wealth of information that genealogy was the big thing at the time. Because there's so many stories. And I just met Wednesday night with Ann Renzani, who's going to be 94, June 6th. And Ann is great shape mentally. You know, she can't get around like she used to and all this, but she loves having visitors. So I went out and visited her, and she said, "Oh, your mom was the greatest lady. She was so nice." She says, "I used to work at Cornello's." And I'm like, "Cornello's? What would I know?" Cornello's was a clothing store next to Raymond Levine's, which is in Roseland. But anyway, she says, "Oh, your mom would come in there, you know, with 3 or 4 of you running around her." I'm like, "Oh, that was me." You know, 3 or 4 little ones running around her, you know. And then she's like, "Oh, yeah, she came and she was so nice. And Mrs. Cornello loved her so much." She says, "Oh, you know, your mother said, oh, I'd like to get this house dressed, but I don't have enough money." She said, "Don't worry about it. Pay for it on time." She said, "No, I can't do that, you know." But she said, before you leave, Mrs. Martello, have a cup of coffee, you know. So my mother said, "No, I got these kids running around." She said, "Oh, don't worry, you know." So Aunt says she sat down, had a cup of coffee, and before she left, Mrs. Cornello gave her the house dress as a gift, you know. But it was really nice to hear because it's so heartwarming because, you know, I was a little brat apparently when I was a little kid, you know, running around like normal kids. So it was real surprising to hear that, someone talking about my mom, you know, when I was just a little kid, when it's like, yeah, that's mom, you know. So that's what I mean beyond going home. All these resources you have around you. And it's like if you're working on a book, you know, you can ask your cousins, you know, "Hey, look, apparently I set this slide up on Fade." Pretty cool, huh? Aunts and uncles, they got stories, you know, because maybe you weren't around, but they were growing up with your dads and brothers and dads and mothers, I mean, you know, and so they got stories of what the things they were into. And that's the thing to remember is that, you know, don't focus narrowly, focus wide, because you get much more input that way. So who knows better? How about friends, old neighbors, and family friends? You know, like I said, Ann Renzani, about to be 94. She's telling me something about my mom that I never knew. I never thought about that. But, you know, and then family friends. Since I started writing the column, I belong to Veneti nel Mondo, which is the shirt. And then I belong to Spaghettios, which is a group of people from Roseland that got together for spaghetti special night at this Comedeca's restaurant. And then Comedeca's closed, so now they're at Carlos Lorenzetti's in Chicago Heights. I live in Wrigleyville, so I go out there once a month for their last monthly meeting. But these people have such fantastic stories. And then I meet somebody I met Irene Mainatella last time. And she's telling me about, "Oh, I know your sister Tootsie. Oh, yeah, how's Tootsie doing?" You know, and my brother Chester's 81. "Oh, I remember Chester." You know, I'm like, "Oh, we don't want to go there." So, you know, that's how you find these things out, by talking to people. So if there's an organization that your family belonged to, and maybe it's still going, check on the books on that, you know. Ann gave me information on the Roseland Operetta Club. Because online someone had contacted me and said, "You write about Roseland." So my dad, she said, my family used to belong to Roseland Operetta Club, and when we went there, and we'd go every Christmas, and I used to be so scared of Santa Claus. And she says, when I was in my 20s, I told my sisters, "Oh, remember the Operetta Club? I was so afraid of Santa Claus." They said, "You know, that was your father. That was Santa Claus." You know? But anyway, so that's valuable sources of information to tap. Don't overlook those things. Okay, these are the different documents that you can find online and elsewhere, you know. My sister, when my dad passed away, he lived with my older brother. When he passed away, my one sister rated the supply of records, let's say. So she has the photos, she has all these things. And I happened to be over her house, and here she had laid out on the table my dad's documents from his naturalization papers, because it was all falling apart because it had been folded and taped together. So obviously my dad carried it around with him all the time, you know. Then she also had his shipping information. So you can get all these different documents by searching for them. And even like property ownership, deeds and records, you know. All right, here we go again, Fade, huh? Okay, saving documents. take a picture, it lasts longer. What could I be talking about there? Well, the fact is that you get to take pictures because it lasts longer. That means of documents, of anything you come up with. Take a picture because it lasts longer. You can save it. You know, for future references, take a picture. Or what we do, keep getting into this Roseland Roundtable Facebook page we have. People will come to SpaghettiOs and say, oh, you guys are going to be there, right? Next month? And they're like, yeah. They bring pictures. We don't take their pictures. They're worried we're going to take their pictures. We take pictures of their pictures.
Do you scan them or take a?
No, we take a photo of them. Dan Brovino has a very good camera, so he takes photos of it. Because that was one of the things we first ran into. So you should take pictures of all the documents, you know. And then one of the things you want to do is preserve them all. There's a thing, my daughter just had a jump drive and it messed up. She's got a master's in special ed, so she teaches special ed at Evanston Township High School. Her jump drives messed up, and a friend of mine checked it out for her and everything. And he says, I don't have the tools, but there's a little piece that needs to be soldered and it'll be fine. She has her 4 or 5 years of programs she's done and everything, you know, that she needed for her kids. So she signed up for Dropbox, which will save everything you have in case you drive messes up and you lose it. You'll have it backed up, and it's like $9.95 a month or something. It's worth it because you're not going to have the document if you don't save them.
Yeah, I got the pictures. I have it right here. So I'm just going through. These are some of the many pictures that are on the web page, the Facebook page.
Can you tilt it a little bit this way?
Okay, let me get this thing here. This is the first slideshow I ever did, so that explains why this is popping up here, because oh look, I can make them fade, and it didn't look like it was working, but apparently it does. So you can digitize, okay? So imagine all your photos, all your documents, all on DVDs for you to share with your family and friends. The way that works is, you can have any service do it, you know? Because there are services that do these, and it's how do you want to do them? Book them, Dano. You put them in a book. It's the easiest way. But you know, you can have Xerox copies of the book. You can have spiral bound books. Tony did one of his family. It's a spiral bound book. You could have a stapled book, or you could have a photo book. A friend of mine at work, his son gave him this as a gift. It's a photo book. Okay, you're all familiar with Answerc.com. Well, here, this is obviously their layout. Okay, and I can tell you right now that it's time consuming, okay? Just like Kim Palmisano said on there, it took her years. Okay, well this is going to take you time, and the nice thing is you can save it. You don't have to sit there and say, oh my God, I'm going to give up a week of my life to do this. I better take a vacation from work, you know? But this is the thing. All these documents, they're photographs of documents they had. And they put them in, his son put them in this book, really nice, with genealogy and all this. You know, so it's very interesting. And this is interesting. It's my buddy Dan at work. It wasn't until he was in his 40s, and they were in the kitchen at his sister's house, some family get-together, and his sister says, oh yeah, you know, well, we're talking about our father, not your father. And he goes like, what are you talking about? Turns out that his father came over, or his uncle preceded his father in coming over here from Poland. Met this woman that he knew from Poland, got married. He ended up passing away, and his brother came over and married her, same woman. So Dan's sister and brother are actually from his uncle, and his dad, he's from his dad, his brother, his dad's brother. But anyway, so that's why this book was very special. It's very confusing, but you see all these documents they have in here, certificate of baptism, you know. So it's a lot of work, but it's very well worth it because now you got a hardcover book. I've never done one of these until last year. I made an album for my American Legion Christmas. I've been the photographer of it for 4 years. So instead of an album, big album, I made one of these. It took me 4 hours. It took me 2 visits to the site to get it straight because I didn't know what I was doing, and everybody just loved it.
How much did it cost?
The book I made was buy one get one, so it was $35, you know, and then got one free, and then of course a couple of added things made it. Oh, shipping was $14.95, so it was like $50. Then I didn't get the book, and FedEx screwed up because the guy drove by where I work, where it was supposed to be delivered, and you know, they didn't look like they were open. I'm like, thanks, you know. Well, I ended up with 4, and I didn't pay for them because they said, nah, that's okay, you can, it's fine. But that was through Costco, and it was mypublisher.com, who I went on the internet to check out. It's not some small, it happens to be a $1 billion company. So there are companies, and Costco, Sam's Club, take your pick. They all have photographic services, you know, and nowadays, the BS of, oh, I want a technical professional person to do it. You don't need that, okay? But remember, always back up. Always have your material. Don't just hand it over. Don't hand over your originals to anybody. That goes for the, you know, IRS too. Anyway, your stories for your family, always carry a pen and paper. Because a story pops into your head when you least expect it. You know, I drive by old St. Anthony's where I used to go, and I remember the convent. Well, my brothers and sisters told me they were running through the building when they were constructing it. A bunch of their kids. And they were calling each other by name, hey, hey. So the next day they're in school, and the nun rattles off these names, and Father Nalene, the pastor, comes in, you know, the old, mean old father, calls them up and, were you running around in the convent last night? No, Father, no, Father. Why do we have your name? Boom, they all got in trouble, they all got hit with the ruler. But, you know, all it takes is a couple lines, 2 or 3 lines, as a memory jogger, right? The convent, the kids running through it and getting caught, you know? And that's why it's only 1 to 3 lines, and you add the details later. And you limit the length. Don't go crazy writing 35 pages, because you'll be sitting there, you know, you're in a Webster-sized dictionary. It doesn't sell anymore. Okay, so your family history that big wouldn't sell either. So you do 1 memory jogger at a time. Talk to me, I can't write, I can't spell alternative. Tape record it, you know? Record it. You save and label each tape, and then if you want, you have someone type it for you. I guarantee you, if you got grandchildren, nieces and nephews, somebody will want to type it for you.
Well, you can use dragon.com or...
You know, I've got Dragon. It's that speech program where you talk at your computer. Just make sure you don't have anything going on. No listening to the radio, okay? You know? Okay, and so this is the way you do it. Baby steps, a piece at a time, you know? Not the whole pie. And that's the thing. People want, oh, I'm going to get this done. You know, if you got ADD, don't bother, because it's not going to be quick. Okay? And it's like Rome wasn't built in a day. So it takes 2 to 3 weeks before you get your book anyway. Okay, are we done? Oh, look. Okay. Pass up here. There you go. Okay, now we get to my Rosen Roundtable. Danny Paul-Petridis and I, Danny Bovino Paul-Petridis and I started this up. It was 2 years ago in February. We have 4,000 friends. Way more friends than we have in real life. 4,000 friends. And about 3,200 plus photos. And like I mentioned, those 2 books originally, well, we don't need them anymore. We don't have to worry about they have copyright and all this. We have all these pictures, you know, and there's comments under each photo when you go on our Facebook site. You look on there, you press on the picture, and all these comments come down, and then you can press on a link, and it'll give you the older comments. So, I don't know about you guys, but when we were growing up, we had the guy come around and take pictures with a Shetland pony, and then you put on a little cowboy outfit, you know. Such a damn unique experience that we have 8 of them. Because in our uniqueness, we have our commonalities, you know? And then we have daily visitors to the page. I mean, you know, people are retired and nothing better to do. I have one woman, she's so cute. She fell asleep on the keyboard. She loves it so much. So, and we have ongoing events and get-togethers, like tomorrow, today's Friday, yep, it is tomorrow. Tomorrow night we have a pizza get-together at Mama Vesuvio's in Palos Heights, which is just off of,
Ridgeland.
pardon me?
Ridgeland.
Just off of Ridgeland and 83. But we have get-togethers, then we have picnics, you know. So once a month we get together, and people are like, well, I don't know anybody. You know what? Where'd you go to school? That's all you got to say. And then boom, next thing you know. And two meetings ago, this couple comes walking up and peeking in the curtain, behind the curtain, to see what I'm like, oh, what are you doing? Looking for somebody? Well, we're from Rosen. We don't know. I said, what's your name? They tell me their name, and I go, hey, does anybody know these people? Well, her aunt was sitting in the corner. You know? So, what can I tell you? Okay, why share your photos? Because they're memory joggers for other people. So if you're going to talk to somebody about what's going on, what's with the what's going on with their family or your family. Show them pictures if you have any. I generally carry I've got a phone book from 1971, 1983. I've got books of Pullman Bank, Pullman, and yearbooks from high school that I carry with me because it jogs people's memory. Remember the photographer and the pony, you know? And that's our commonalities there, where you find our uniqueness. And then people start sharing their stories, and you don't know, long lost relatives might show up in the pictures, you know? Ann Ranzani showed me this picture from when she was 19 years old. She's 94 now. When she was 19 years old, in an opera at the Roseland Operetta Club, you know, and she says, "Oh, you know Bob Stella?" I'm like, "Yeah, Bob Stella called me up. He was out in the suburbs. He called me up because some German people were cleaning out their garage, and he works with their son, and their son said, 'Hey, I know you like Roseland, so I'll give you the stuff.'" He gave it to me. But that's the thing. It's like so much stuff that this Ann Ranzani says, "Well, that's Bob Stella's dad. And, oh, and that's his uncle," you know? So it's like these pictures are definitely get things going. So I wanted to reiterate that don't expect to do this in a hurry, because that's not the way it worked. You know, the fact is that this is something that takes time, and that's not what should scare you off, okay? Just, it's going to take time. That's a fact. But it's so cool when you get it done. You know, like I said in the book that's being passed around there, there's so many different documents. Hey, that's my last slide for sure. Very good. But that's the whole thing. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. But there's plenty more coming up. What?
Is Ann Ranzani, she married to Lou Ranzani?
Yes.
He was commander of Post 49 American Legion.
Oh, what?
On
111. Yeah. Yeah. And
and Don Bovino, did his family come from 117th near St. Catherine's?
no, that's his cousins.
That's
Dan Bovino's father had, his family had something like 8 boys or something. And everybody says, "Oh, Dan, you related?" Yes. Yeah, what are you going to say? And Dan Bovino's, what's interesting, Dan Bovino grew up in Roseland, but like I'm from St. Anthony's. Tony's from St. Anthony's. Daryl that's running around here taking pictures is from St. Anthony's. Jeanette back there. Not only from St. Anthony's, and went to school together in St. Anthony's. But the thing is that all these people are from St. Anthony's. Dan Bovino went to Holy Rosary Irish. You know, but Holy Rosary Irish, St. Anthony was a territorial parish. Now became a national because of changes in Roseland. It encompasses 8 parishes, and Holy Rosary Irish is one. So we picked up Danny from there. But then he started reading my column, and that's how we got together, and we started the Roseland Roundtable. And like I said, it's a great resource for people, and they put up 3,200 pictures, over 3,200 pictures. So they're enjoying it, obviously, and that's how we're reaching across. Anyway, I went over my time, I believe.
Okay, no, you did a fine job. Of all of the neighborhoods in Chicago, Italian neighborhoods in Chicago, the Roseland neighborhood was the one, I think, that was best organized socially, with clubs and organizations, church groups, musical groups, the operetta, veterans groups, bowling leagues, and all that. They were very, very well organized, and it is a shame that Roseland was changed overnight. What do they call that? The real estate people came in and blockbusted the place, and so all of that Italian Americanism, and it was mostly on the American side. The younger generations had really organized themselves very well, and they looked for a bright future, and they built the new church in the 60s. And then by the end of the 60s, the neighborhood was in danger, and most of them had moved out. So it's a sad tale of blockbusting and neighborhood change, but it's interesting that people are still involved in it, and that's a tribute to the original organization of folks.
Spaghetti-O still meets the 5th Tuesday of the month.
No, right. The 5th?
Last Tuesday of the month.
They meet the last Tuesday of the month, and this is their 10th year. They had a dinner dance because it was the 10th year. 435 people attended. So that's how, you know, and these are, when they once a month, there's 70 to 100 people that attend. So 430 people showing up, and this is when like the people that were 86 years old and can't get out got their sons or daughters to bring them out to it, you know. But like Dominic was mentioning, the groups are so strong. Now in Pullman, they've got a lot of people from Roseland show up at Pullman. So they have Pullman has a Friends of Pullman reunion picnic. They have a Labor Day picnic. They have a July 4th picnic that everybody's invited to. So that's why a lot of people return. Because like Dominic says, Roseland was one of the it's the greatest place you could have lived. They think, you know, they feel, and everybody.
Did you know Bill Stackmas, he used to do,
Yeah, he did the printing.
I graduated with him from Fanger,
Oh, okay.
because he used to take pictures, and he actually had a couple of booklets. At one of our class reunions, he was passing them out on booklets on Roseland and Pullman.
Yeah, he's the guy that printed it. He was the printer for those 2 books. It's his daughter that won't let me take pictures.
Oh,
But
really?
it's okay.
Being
Yeah.
a bibliophile, we gotta get a book on Roseland
Oh, yeah.
sometime out of this. And certainly the Casa Italia be happy to support whatever efforts are out there. Okay, now who's next? We have Tony. Tony, you're next. Tony Morrow is a volunteer here with the library on Mondays. I invite you all to be volunteers as well. We have a great time, and we're doing really good work. And Tony has built up our capacity to aid people in their research, their genealogical research, and general research. He's put a lot of this stuff on the web, and we've got a website that every day is growing by leaps and bounds with oral histories and other materials, primary materials. Tony, go for it.
Thank you, Dominic. Good evening. I'm Tony Morrow. Is it okay? The sound?
You could bring it a little closer.
I grew up in Roseland and went to St. Anthony's Church, just like CJ, Jeanette do. I've been in genealogy for about 10 years, on and off. I retired in 2010, but I still work part-time for a while. So I wasn't really deep into it, but now that I've got more time, I'm able to do a lot more. When I started, I just wanted to find out where my grandfather was born, when he was born, my grandparents and so forth. And then after I found that, I expanded it. Well, okay, where was his father born? Who was his father? Where was his mother born? And so forth. So it kept growing and growing. While I was doing this research, I recognized a lot of names. As you can attest, all those names from Roseland. I see that, you know, when I see the ship's manifest and I see my grandfather coming over here on the ship, he's with 3 or 4 other people, Venenzianos and Regos and things like that. So I recorded that information too because I thought it might come in handy later on because there was a lot of questions that I had to get answered. So I didn't just concentrate on my family tree, but I also recorded information about others. I use this free personal ancestry file that you can download from the Mormon Church website called FamilySearch.org. There's other family tree software out there. This one's free and it works, so that's what I use. And it's pretty good. Early on, I used to go to the family history centers and look at the microfilm. And that was a real drag because after about 2 hours of looking at the microfilm, you're wasted. Also used whatever I could remember. I for some reason, I'm the oldest in my family, so I can remember a lot of the things that my grandmother talked about, and a lot of the people that she talked about, and the people that came to our house for breakfast on Sunday morning and things like that. The guy that gave me the haircut when I was a kid. So I knew all those names. So I brought them back up. I conjured up those memories. And then, of course, my mother's still alive. And she's still pretty sharp, so I talk to her all the time about these things and always check with her or ask her, do you know who this was, or do you know who that was? And I also got a lot of help from my sister who lived down in Texas, and for some reason she became a Mormon for a while, and she was working at one of these family history centers down in Texas, so she was able to do a lot of research. So whenever I got stuck, I'd call my sister or email her and say, hey, can you see if you can find out about so-and-so, or why did this one come to America and then go back, and things like that. So that's what I did early. Now it's a whole new ball game because everything is online, just about. I don't think naturalization papers are, Dan, do you know?
Not the papers
You still got to go to
themselves.
the
index
archive
is.
for that, but just about everything is online. But I visited the Ellis Island website. Before Ellis Island, the immigrants came through Castle Garden, so I've been there. I used Steve Morse to search those two websites because I like the way that search engine works better than the others. My mother's family is from Termini and Marisi in Sicily, and there's a whole database related to the Termini and Marisi genealogy. So my sister was a member of that, and she was able to get a lot of information there. Family Search is just what they have online now from the Mormon Church, which grows every single day. Ancestry, I didn't want to pay for it, so I go to the library and use it. Cook County has a website for birth, marriage, and death certificates. State of Illinois has a website. Social Security Death Index, did you read, Dan? It's going away, going to do away with it because too many people are stealing identities. So I guess they're going to take it off. So I did all this in a course of 10 years, more now than earlier. And I had all this information stored on my computer, and by the way, I never print anything when I download something or when I go to the Family Search Center. I never print anything. I always store it on a flash drive or something, put it on my computer. My computer's backed up so that I have it digitally, and I don't have the problem that Kim was talking about. Kim did a wonderful scrapbook, but she only has one copy, and very hard to reproduce now. So you do this digitally, you can reproduce it 100 times. Doesn't make a difference. What I found from the Family Tree software is they probably all have a report section where you can print reports. Well, I printed some reports and took them to my mother, and my mother was totally confused by it. She couldn't understand it. Now, see if I can show you one. I'll show you one in a minute. So what I decided to do was, okay, I need to document this a little better. I need to write this down so my mother can understand it, and so my children can understand it, and so forth. So I decided to write what I call the narrative timeline, which is nothing more than this individual was born in this town, in this province, etc., on this date, and his wife would be the next paragraph. She was born here, they met and got married, and what I found was when I started to do that, I started to find flaws in my research that said, well, that can't possibly be. She would have been 10 years old if she got married on that date and was born on that date. So go back to the drawing board and figure that out. So that was very helpful for me. The other benefit of writing it down like that is I can include some folklore, some stories from my mother. For example, my mother had an aunt who was born in 1900 and died in 1905. Her name was Celia, and she was going up with my grandmother to Michigan Ave, which was a shopping district in Roseland, to have a portrait taken. And she got ill on the way, so they went back home, and she passed away just after that. So not only did I know when she was born and when she passed away, but I knew the story behind that whole thing because from talking to my mother. So I put that into, and I'm going to show you an example, and I'm going to try and put it up on the screen, but I'm also going to pass around this. This is one chapter of what I did with this story, this narrative timeline. The whole thing is about 200 pages, and to be honest with you, this parchment paper costs a lot of money, so I didn't want to print it out yet because it's not done yet. But that's what I did, and I'm going to try and, Dan, maybe you can help me. I got another, I got a Acrobat that we can look at real quick.
Do you folks think that Italians are more interested or less interested than other ethnic groups in genealogy? This is a general question for anybody. What have you found in your experience?
I go to the Schaumburg Library and we have big groups of German and Irish. Big groups. I know Italians. I'm the only one sitting there all by myself.
Okay, this is the same thing I'm passing around. This is all 200 pages of it, but I just wanted to show you that I did it digitally, and because I did it digitally, I can reproduce it as many times as I want to.
And you can update it.
Pardon me?
You can update it.
And I can update it, sure. As a table of contents, what I did is I took two of my great-grandparents, which I know something about. I think I have 8, but I'm sorry, that's 4. So the other 4, I don't have any information yet. And then my grandparents, and I had my great-grandparents there too. But what I wanted to show you here, I'm not very good with this finger thing.
We have a mouse. We have a small Topolino.
Okay, let me try it here.
Plug that now.
How is that with using Microsoft Word and then converting it to Acrobat Reader?
What's that?
I don't, I want to go to a certain chapter. So, what you,
A human interface device.
and they're coming up yet. No, that was me. So by putting those links in, I was able to jump to the chapter that I wanted to show. And this is my grandfather and my grandmother on my mother's side. And as I said, I just said, well, Giuseppe Mantilla was born in Termini Amarisi on the 17th of September, 1885. And if I click on this one here, it jumps to his birth, his record of his birth in Termini Amarisi.
When you have a screen, you could make it bigger and read it more clearly than you could if it were actually printed book. Although I still love books.
But this is just some things that I included. I got this is a census. I don't know what that was. More census. I was able to get census from 1900 through 1930, and of course now 1940 is out. But I know where everybody lived in 1940. This is another grandfather. This is his draft registration in 1917. But the thing I wanted to point out here is digitally you're able to jump to the document. When I said he was born and I put a hyperlink in there, if you click on a hyperlink, you can jump to that document that shows he was born in 1885, and then you can click the return hyperlink and go back to where you were reading and continue reading. And that's examples going around the room. So that's all I wanted to show. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. By the way, I was in the computer business for 45 years, and you can see I still fumble around with all this new stuff. I'm looking for the 80-column cards that we can sort, you know, and so forth. So
Can you print your book on green bar?
yeah,
The ultimate.
right.
Tony, a word or two about what's on the website.
On the website, well, we have, first of all, we have, thanks to Jacques, we have all of Mario Avignon's columns, all 40 years. And they're in, I think they're in 5-year increments. Each document spans 5 years, and you can search each 5-year increment for a name or a place or whatever. For example, you could search, CJ talked about Ronzani, Mrs. Ronzani. You can search for Ronzani and it'll show you everywhere where the name Ronzani appears in that 5-year span. We've got Tony Sorrentino, columns from Franoy. He wrote a column called Commentary. We've got Maurice Marcello.
Marcello wrote a rundown of all of the different towns of origin of the various celebrities in Italian-American life during those days. I think he went for about a year or so and took a different town or region each month. And it talks a little bit about the town of origin, then talks about who came from them and how successful they've been in the world and all that.
Okay, we have.
Do you have Tony Scariano's columns? Do we have them up yet? Tony Scariano did columns on Italian names and their meaning and their source, etc. For many years. And if his columns are not up now, they will be up soon. And we've got Did we put up the pictures of the ladies in the costumes yet? We've got traditional Italian costumes in the 1980s, early 1980s. The Italian women's group decided that they were going to sew authentic costumes, and so about 40 or 50 of them sewed their own or had costumes sewn based on authentic traditions. And we have some nice pictures of those for anybody who's interested in costumes of the different regions.
And the other thing that we have on the website, which is a very huge project, but I'm working to get it completed. In 1980, and a little bit in 79 and 81, but primarily in 1980, under Dominic's direction, they conducted interviews with 113 Italian Americans from the Chicago area, various neighborhoods like Little Italy or Taylor Street, Belmont Cragen, Roseland, Grand Avenue, Chicago Heights, and so forth. These interviews run about anywhere from 45 minutes to, in the case of Mario Avignon, about 2.5 hours. And we also have, they had them transcribed, and we have the original transcript on the website too. So what you can do is you can download the transcript from the website, and then you can download the audio interview from the website. You can play the audio interview and you can follow along with the transcript in the event that you didn't understand some of what was on the audio interview, which in certain cases they're not that clear. Some were done real well, and some, I think, if you get farther away from the microphone, you didn't, or from the tape recorder, you didn't hear it too well. So that's pretty much what we've got. We're adding things every day, as Dominic said. We've got a bunch of pictures on Picasso that you can get to from the website, and we hope to continue to build it.
What area of Roseland were you from?
I went to Scanlon School.
Scanlon?
I lived mostly around 117th and Wentworth.
Okay, because my family grew up 118th and Harvard and Stewart. They all went to Scanlon Grammar School. Of course, they're older than you, and they're all gone. My mother and my aunts and uncles. But you mentioned a barber. Did you go to a barber on Michigan Ave?
No, well, the barber used to come to our house. His name was Dodge. He worked at Wisconsin Steel, and he'd come to our house, and the story that I remember, which I should write down someday, is he gave us all haircuts. I think he charged 50 cents a piece, but he always expected a cup of coffee, and he always expected some spirits to put into the coffee.
Oh, yeah.
And so my dad would always have to bring out the Jim Beam or the Four Roses or something like that. Well, what it meant to us was if he came to our house early in the morning, we got a halfway decent haircut. If he came in the afternoon, we'd hide. We'd try and hide. Anyway, that's we got more presentations to get to, so I'm going to yield the floor. Dominic?
Okay, very good. Gloria Valentino has been working for quite a while in encouraging folks to write, to journal, to record their memories. And this is right in keeping with what we are all about this evening. So many of us complain because we miss the opportunity of interviewing someone or whatever. But we ourselves are history now, or part of history. I guess we could wait to be fully history till a little bit later. But we contain the information. We know the information. And we've got have to preserve it in the various ways we've talked about this evening. And one really good way is through writing it down, writing stories, writing journals. And I'll leave it up to Gloria now to carry on and maybe do a little experiment with it.
This has been such an exciting year for me. I knew about Fenoy, but I didn't know, I knew about Casa Italia, but I was not involved with Casa Italia until last year when I attended that wonderful authors meeting. And I just was amazed at all of this. And in a whole year, so much has happened. I gave a writing workshop here. I became a columnist at 71 for Fenoy that goes on the website. I mean, it's amazing. I won't be using any technology right now, so we'll be using cards, or I'll show you some things. But I want to tell you, my parents were from Mola de Badi. Nobody knew Mola de Badi. And when I was born, we lived right next door to Santa Maria de la Rata Church. And then we moved west when I was 5 years old in Our Lady of Angels parish. And tomorrow afternoon, they're going to have the rededication of Our Lady of Angels Church. So, you know, it goes all around. But when I hear about all the genealogy and all the things you do, I think of the paisans that we had. And on Sunday, they'd come over and we had pound cake and fruit cocktail and little shot glasses with anisette, you know, and the world's problems were solved there. Or we lived on Drake Avenue, and who took the wallpaper off, who did the cement work, who did the plumbing, who did I mean, it was just a wonderful life. Now everybody's got $1 million houses, nobody goes over on Sunday. You don't have Sunday dinner, you know, everybody's out, that's it. So I'm going to share some things with you, and I'm going to pass these cards around. So take one, just so you get an idea of the feel of those cards. But, and again, a picture is worth 1,000 words. This picture here, this little picture here, was taken in 1958 when I graduated high school, and we had a luncheon at Immaculata. Okay, a couple of years ago, I attended a program at the University of Chicago, and the teacher said, write a story about, you know, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I had seen that picture, but there's my mother with her hat, with her gloves, you know, this was 1958. And the story I wrote was called The Omen Lady. Okay, because, you know, whatever she said. And the scene was a class day, and it was Mother's Day for graduations. The date was Immaculata, May 20th. And at the luncheon, everybody was asked what they were going to do when they graduated. And during the luncheon, a question was asked, what are you going to do upon graduation? High school graduation, the time in our life that is filled with dreams about what we're going to be, where we're going to be going, who we're going to marry, and all the stuff that dreams are made of. The replies were going to college, entering the convent, becoming a nurse. I was probably the only one who wouldn't be going to college. Kiddingly, I answered, I'm going to stay with my mom. Maybe the reason I said this is because my parents were older. Years ago, being a mother at 39 was not typical, you know, that was it. So she really didn't like me too much when I was born, you know, at 39, here I come. My sister hated me because for 8 years she was the queen, and then I came and bumped her. My brother was mad because I was another girl, and he used to wear a baseball cap, and he threw it down on the ground, you know, he was really ticked. But he liked, I was the best one. And so she'd say, I had you for your old age. And after the luncheon, when she got home, but I never knew this story until I started writing this. She told my sister what I said, and she was upset that I said, I'm going to live with my mother, stay with my mother. She said, because the angel passed by when I said that. That's the Omen Lady. Why didn't you tell me that before? You know, all those things with the angel lady. So, as I wrote this story, the teacher said to me, this is a moving story and I feel sure that you have much more to say. Try to focus on one aspect of your life, perhaps your life with your mother or your efforts to go back to school and write about that in detail. So one little topic can take you to many topics. So one of the things that I do with people is turning memories into memoirs. All the genealogy is about your past, about your grandparents, about your ancestors. Turning memories into memoirs is about you, okay? And writing. And what I have people do in the class is these cards I discovered in Paris. And there's 100 cards, but on every line, like, I'm sorry, what was your name? TJ. He said, take it small, just write little things. And what you would do with these cards is every card you write every year of your life. So I was born in 1940, so I go 1940 to 2000. I'm doing 100. If I make it, I make it. If I don't, I don't. But right now, you know. But the interesting thing is 1940, 1941. So at your birth, you'll write when you were born, how many brothers and sisters you had, your mother and father, the hospital. So this card fills enough information for you to start talking about your memories, okay? And then why I have these cards is because you can put them in a box, and maybe you don't want to write about your first year. Maybe you want to write about when you got married, okay? So you can pull that card out, go into a journal, and write about it. But you got these little things to get the ideas moving. What happened with this, I started writing mine. I was at 1943, and I remembered my dad. I remembered this like it was yesterday. And all the paisans were in the kitchen, and my father had a patch on his eye. And I called my sister, so this was 5 years ago. I said, Rita, how old was I when Daddy came home from the hospital? What had happened when I was 2, a beer barrel had exploded. They went to a christening, and a beer barrel exploded. And it affected his eye, and another man, his whole jaw was hurt. So what happened, Dr. Corelli said to him, Mr. Valentino, if you don't have this surgery, you're going to jeopardize the sight of the other eye. So I'm calling my sister, never expecting to hear the story I heard. And she said, oh yes, you were 3 years old. When Daddy was told he had to have the operation, he sat us all together. I'm 2 or 3. I don't know what he said. I don't even remember it. But my brother, my 2 sisters, and my dad said, I'm going to have an operation. They have to remove my eye. And he said to them, I want to always be able to see you. That's why I'm having this. If I didn't do this exercise, if I didn't call up my sister and ask about that image that I had in my mind, I would have never discovered something new about my dad. And that's what turning memories into memoirs are. It's discovering something new in your life, something that you loved. In fact, the things that you gave, those little tips, I love that for the column because I'm doing the turning the memories into memoirs. And it's just little by little, just write these things down and, feel that paper. Isn't it great? The great thing about this, you could write it this way, you could write it this way, you can write it on both sides, And when you have these, maybe in a box, you might have pictures for when you graduated high school. And you could just put them all in here and then move forward. But it's really important that you start writing your stories. Because I think last time I was here, the saddest question is, why didn't I ask them? Why didn't I ask them? I just found my father on Ellis Island and the manifest. He came here May 13th, 1921. Okay, and it's on Ellis, it's on there. So the ship, the picture of the ship, we're living in, I don't do the technology, but it's so available. It's so wonderful. Is that Rachel over there?
Yes,
Hi
it
dear,
is.
how are you? She attended the workshop a couple weeks ago. So again, it's really about that. Here's one of the people, he did this, a lucky guy from the old neighborhood. What would your title be for your story? Everybody's got a story. Mine is, what's your story, Morning Glory? And you know how I got it? I was watching Jeopardy, and every column, column was, every answer was a flower. And it came, what's your story? And they said Morning Glory. I'm like, oh, that works. I like that. I'm going to use that for the title of my book. So, you know, this guy, a lucky guy from the old neighborhood,